Welcome back, everyone, to Coffeesodes. For another deep dive into some fascinating research. This is episode 18, and today we're going to be talking about something that I think is really thought-provoking, which is the welfare of ambassador animals. So if you want to learn more about the research we're using for this deep dive, make sure to check out the episode description. But for now, just grab your favorite mug, settle in, and let's get started.
You know, it's amazing to think about how much zoos have evolved over the years. I mean, we've really moved beyond those old-fashioned menageries where animals were kind of just spectacles, behind bars. Modern zoos are all about education and conservation and really critically animal welfare.
So we're talking about ambassador animals today. And these are the animals that are, those charismatic creatures that kind of represent their species in educational programs, right? But I imagine there's a lot of different ways to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Some ambassador animals, they stay on site at the zoo. They're interacting with visitors in exhibits or shows. Others hit the road. They're visiting schools, hospitals, even corporate events. And even within those programs, you have different levels of contact. Some are observation only, while others allow for those hands-on experiences.
That's what makes me wonder. When we talk about the welfare of these animals, how do we even define welfare? I mean, is it just about making sure they're physically healthy?
Well, that's a good starting point. But animal welfare is really much broader than that. It encompasses their emotional and mental well-being, too. Think of it as striving for a state where the animal is not just surviving, but truly thriving.
So how can we tell if an animal is thriving? I mean, can we just, ask them?
Well, while we can't exactly have a chat over coffee with a penguin or anything, we can learn a lot by paying close attention to their behavior. Changes in appetite, activity levels, social interactions. These can all be really valuable clues about an animal's inner state.
And that's where training comes in, right? Because I've heard a lot about the shift away from, those old force and dominance methods.
Yeah, absolutely. Modern animal care is all about positive reinforcement. Instead of punishing unwanted behaviors, we focus on rewarding the behaviors we want to see more of. It's like giving the animal a voice and a choice in how they interact with the world.
So it's not just about giving treats, it's about empowering the animals.
Exactly. And two key concepts here are choice and control. Choice is about providing options. Like, imagine a training scenario where instead of forcing an animal into a crate, you teach them to enter it voluntarily by associating the crate with something positive, like a favorite toy or a special treat.
Okay, so they have the choice to go in or not. But how does control factor into this?
Well, control refers to the animal's ability to influence their environment and get a predictable outcome. So if they learn that entering the crate reliably leads to that toy, they have a sense of control over the situation.
So it's not just about avoiding negative experiences, it's about giving them agency. I can see how that would reduce stress.
Absolutely. And reducing stress is crucial because chronic stress can really wreak havoc on an animal's well-being. It affects everything from their immune system to their lifespan.
So even if an animal isn't showing obvious signs of distress, that underlying stress could still be a real concern. It makes you realize just how important it is to get this right.
Exactly. And that's why the research we're diving into today outlines 7 key areas or pillars to focus on when it comes to ambassador animal welfare.
7 pillars. Okay, I'm ready to build this temple of animal well-being. Where do we start?
Well, the foundation of any successful ambassador program is choosing the right animal. And it's not as simple as just picking the cutest or most exotic creature.
So there's more to it than just charisma. I'm picturing you wouldn't want to thrust a shy, retiring sloth into the spotlight.
Exactly. You have to consider the individual animal's characteristics, their past experiences, even underlying health conditions. For example, the research points out that parent-reared owls often really struggle to adjust to life in human care. They may display a lot of behaviors that indicate stress, and they don't adapt as well to training.
Wow, I never would have thought about that. So an owl that was raised by its own kind might actually be less suited for an ambassador role than one that was raised by humans.
It's definitely something to consider. The key is careful evaluation before any animal enters an ambassador program.
That makes perfect sense. Now, what about the people involved? Does the research address that too?
Oh, absolutely. Choosing the right humans is the second pillar of ambassador animal welfare. Enthusiasm is fantastic, but you need more than just a love for animals to be effective in this role.
So are you saying that experience trumps passion?
In a way, yes. You need skilled and knowledgeable handlers who deeply understand animal behavior. Someone might have years of experience working with animals, but if they aren't fluent in positive reinforcement techniques or can't read an animal's subtle cues, they're not the right fit for this kind of work.
Yeah, it's like any profession. You need the right training and temperament to excel. So it's not about seniority, it's about being able to build a genuine rapport with the animal and using effective training methods. And speaking of training methods, that brings us to the third pillar, right? Using the most positive and least intrusive techniques possible.
Exactly. This is where things get really interesting. The research discusses something called Friedman's hierarchy of behavior change, which encourages trainers to prioritize the least intrusive yet effective methods.
Okay, I'm all ears. Can you unpack that a bit for me? What does Friedman's hierarchy look like in practice?
Sure. So let's say you're working with an ambassador animal that tends to pull on the leash. Instead of yanking back on the leash, which is punishment-based, you would use positive reinforcement to teach the animal to walk calmly by your side.
So you'd reward the animal for loose leash walking, instead of punishing them for pulling.
Exactly. It's about shifting the focus from what we don't want the animal to do to what we do want them to do. And studies have shown that this positive approach is both more effective and more humane.
That makes sense. I mean, it's like teaching a child. Positive reinforcement is much more effective than constant scolding.
That's a great analogy. And this ties in perfectly with the fourth pillar, building trust. Every interaction with an animal is either a deposit or a withdrawal from what you can think of as a trust account.
Okay, I love that analogy. So when we use positive reinforcement, we respect their boundaries. And we respond sensitively to their cues. We're making a deposit. But if we use force or ignore their signals, we're making a withdrawal.
Precisely. And just like with a bank account, if you make too many withdrawals, you end up in trouble. Building trust takes time, consistency, and genuine empathy. And that trust goes beyond just the animal's relationship with their handler. It impacts how they view their whole environment.
So a trusting animal is more likely to feel safe and secure, which then contributes to their overall well-being.
You got it. And this leads us to the fifth pillar, which might surprise some people, enrichment.
Enrichment. See, I always thought that just meant like giving them toys to play with.
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's so much more to it than that.
There is. Enrichment isn't about just filling a space with random objects. It's about creating a really dynamic and engaging environment that allows the animal to express its natural behaviors.
So are we talking about something more holistic? Like considering their social, their physical, even their psychological needs?
You're exactly right. It's about going beyond that typical, toys in a cage approach and thinking about enrichment in terms of social interaction, cognitive challenges, sensory stimulation opportunities to exercise species-specific behaviors.
Wow, that's a lot more complex than I initially imagined. Can you give some concrete examples of what this might look like?
Absolutely. So instead of just giving a parrot a pre-made toy, imagine providing materials and opportunities for them to build their own nests. Or for more solitary species, like a tiger, creating scent trails or puzzle feeders that tap into their natural hunting instincts.
So it's about creating opportunities for them to engage in behaviors they would naturally exhibit in the wild.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that enrichment isn't limited to the animal's main enclosure. It should be incorporated into their transport, their training sessions, and even the spaces where they interact with the public.
Okay, so enrichment should be like woven into every aspect of an ambassador animal's life. That's a really fascinating perspective.
It is. And the sixth pillar really drives this point home, institutional support.
Institutional support. This sounds like it's less about like the direct animal care and more about the bigger picture, am I right?
You are. This pillar emphasizes the role of administrators and supervisors in creating a culture that prioritizes animal welfare. It's about providing adequate funding for enrichment programs, training opportunities for staff, and establishing clear policies that support these efforts.
So it's about making sure that everyone from the top down is on the same page when it comes to animal welfare.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment where everyone understands that animal welfare isn't just an afterthought. It's a core value that guides every decision.
That's so important. And it makes me wonder about the seventh pillar. Does it build on this idea of a holistic approach?
It absolutely does. The seventh pillar focuses on designing public programs that allow for species-appropriate behaviors. Think of it as moving away from those passive, animal behind glass presentations and toward more interactive programs that really showcase the animal's incredible natural abilities.
Okay, this is where I get really excited. So instead of just seeing a hawk perched on a club, you might witness it demonstrating its hunting skills in a controlled but engaging way.
Exactly. These types of programs can be incredibly educational and entertaining for the audience. They help people connect with animals on a much deeper level, fostering a greater appreciation for their role in the ecosystem.
It's about showcasing their awesomeness in a way that respects their nature. I love that. But with all this emphasis on natural behaviors, Is there a risk that the educational message gets lost?
That's a great question, and it brings up a really important point. The key is to strike a balance. We can design programs that allow animals to engage in species-appropriate behaviors while still weaving in that educational content. It's about creativity and thoughtful presentation.
So you're saying it's not an either-or situation, we can have both.
Exactly. Imagine a program where a porcupine is navigating like a specially designed climbing structure. The handler could explain, how porcupines use their climbing abilities in the wild to escape predators or access food sources. The audience is entertained, the animal gets to express its natural behaviors, and everyone learns something new. It's a win-win-win.
That's a fantastic example. It makes you realize that with a little ingenuity, we can create programs that are both enriching for the animals and engaging for the audience. But how do we know if these programs are truly successful? You mentioned earlier that ongoing evaluation is crucial.
You're spot on. We can't just implement these 7 pillars and call it a day. We need to constantly assess and refine our programs to make sure we're really meeting the needs of the animals.
So how do we measure success? What are the indicators that an ambassador animal is truly thriving?
Well, we can start by looking at their behavior. Are they showing signs of stress, like pacing, excessive vocalization, or self-injurious behavior? Or are they generally calm, alert, and engaged with their environment?
So the subtle cues that we talked about earlier are really important to pay attention to, because a stressed animal might not always be outwardly distressed, but there might be subtle signs if you know what to look for.
Exactly. And we shouldn't just rely on our observations. The research emphasizes the importance of involving veterinary professionals in the evaluation process. Vets can provide really valuable insights into the animal's physical health, identifying potential issues that might not be outwardly visible.
So it's about taking like a multifaceted approach, considering both the animal's behavior and their underlying health. It's like getting a second opinion from a specialist.
Precisely. And this highlights the fact that animal welfare is a team effort. It's not just the responsibility of the handlers and trainers. It requires collaboration between animal care staff, veterinarians, and even administrators.
So it's about creating a network of support where everyone is working together to make sure that these animals are truly thriving. Did the research provide any specific tools or resources that institutions can use to evaluate their ambassador animal programs?
It did. It included a list of questions that institutions can ask themselves to assess their programs. These questions cover everything from housing and transport conditions to staff training and institutional culture. They also ask about things like, is the animal getting the nutrition they need? Is there enough enrichment being offered? What about social interaction? Is that being considered?
So it's like a comprehensive checklist to ensure that every aspect of the program is really aligned with best practices. It's like a blueprint for building an exceptional ambassador animal program.
Exactly. And it encourages institutions to be proactive, to constantly seek ways to improve and refine their programs. It's about striving for excellence in animal care. Animals are not just exhibits or performers. They're sentient beings deserving of our respect, our compassion, and our unwavering commitment to their well-being.
And that brings us to the final thought-provoking question we want to leave you with today. If you were an ambassador animal, what would you want your program to look like? What would make you feel safe, respected, and fulfilled? We encourage you to visit your local zoo with this new perspective. Paying attention to how the animals are interacting with their handlers and environment. Are their needs being met? Are they thriving?
And remember, every interaction we have with animals, whether at the zoo or in our own backyards, is an opportunity to learn, grow, and advocate for their well-being.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time for another Coffeesodes exploration. Until then, keep those coffee cups full and those minds curious.